I am pleased to welcome Jim Bradley back to the podcast. Jim, how are we this afternoon?
Good, Molly. How are you? I'm glad to be back as always.
Yeah, well, this is I'm glad to have you as well. This is a topic I'm excited to chat with you about. And we were just saying this should be something that we talk to other clients about because we're all on our lifelong learning journey in some capacity. You have taken it very seriously in, the education world, which we're going to dive into. But I think it's a cool topic. And of all people, within our Nolan Consulting Group world, I think you really exemplify this in a formal learning way very well.
Oh, good. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. So this idea for this conversation came up maybe a couple weeks ago when you were sharing, and I was with Brian and I, or maybe in the larger group, that you are getting back into your doctorate of business administration. That's correct, right? I'm saying that right?
Yeah, it was during our meeting start the year where we were saying things we were going to focus on
That's
personally and
right.
business from a business perspective as well. Yeah, yeah.
So you are making 2025 a year of education for you again.
Yeah, and thanks to Catherine pushing me a little bit, but my journey in a doctoral world, there was a 2 year investment of my time and everything, like coming out of COVID. And
Hmm.
I made a career change, and that's when I ended up with Nolan, and that all got was put on hold for me. And then, growing like my client base and everything, like pretty busy, but like now 2025 is just being more intentional. The coursework's
Hmm.
all done, the study was started, but there will be a shift in like the focus of the study topic because I'm in a different world right now. So that's
Cool.
really navigating that. Yeah.
So I have a lot of questions about, what does it mean to enter the doctoral world of business administration? But first, let's talk a little bit about, your learning journey kind of from the get-go. When did you consciously choose to want to learn more beyond the required education? And when I say required education, I'm thinking, your bachelor's degree, going to college. Did you go right into your MBA after that? When did that shift happen for you?
Yeah, it was a great question. So I was reading it. Honestly, it was an accident, Molly, right? Like I wasn't like a in high school, I wasn't like a stellar student or anything like that. What happened was I became an adult learner, right? So I graduated high school, went to college for a year, got used to making money, stopped, and then went
Hmm.
back as an adult at night. And at the same
Okay.
time, growing my family and learning and it was out of necessity at that point, right? Like I'm like, hey, I got to provide for my family. I got to get the
Yeah.
skill sets that separate me from other people. There was a major light bulb moment for me during those years. I was in a business program while working in business, and everything I learned, like I could immediately apply. And like
Cool.
I got a significant benefit of that, right? Like
Hmm.
promoted, like people valued my input. And it just clicked for me that when I learn something and I apply it right away, like there's just a immediate benefit. So it wasn't as much as a choice for learning. It was more, I saw the advantage to improving and developing as a
Okay.
person and my craft, something I remain focused on to this day. So like whatever I'm working on, I just try to learn as much as possible and turn around and apply it. And as we go through this discussion, you're going to see that's going to be highlighted in the work that I do with clients. Like if they have a problem,
Hmm.
I have a problem and I need to find
I love
a
that. I
pathway.
mean,
Yeah.
because, I say so often to people that we hope to work with, we are a relationship-based organization and your problems are our problems, your wins, we feel that joy, that joy for you, we want to celebrate the wins with you, but we also want to be there when you're struggling and we feel it. Believe me when I tell you, when a client is going through something rough, our whole team feels it.
Yeah, no, and absolutely. And like I would just say that like through my coaching journey, I just learned a ton on my own.
Yeah.
By like their needs forced me to like look into things and research and learn.
Yeah.
Nolan, like Brian, get me involved with the succession program, like learned a ton there. Now we're doing built to sell. And so again, I
It's
go
always
back
something
to like,
new.
yeah, and I go back to like learn it and apply it right away. And like it just becomes a habit or a skill rather than a choice, I think.
Is it safe to say that a lot of your adult years, you've been in some form of schooling or education, outside of the work environment between, working and getting your bachelor's, working, getting your master's, working now and getting your doctoral, like those things obviously take a lot of time. And certainly when you're also working full time on top of that, the education experience has to be, stretched out a little bit. Is it safe to say that you've spent a lot of your life in a learning environment?
Definitely. So like I went to a university called Gwynn and Mercy, and it was really in the early 2000s. It was the beginning of an adult learning and like satellite learning.
Hmm.
And now there's a lot of online, but like their thing was lifelong learning, right? So like that was the core value that I learned. But yeah, there was gaps in there, Molly. Like you asked me, like there was a 4 year period between my bachelor's and my MBA.
Okay.
And so I took those skills, applied them, and then I'm like, hey, I'm just like everybody else. I was like, everybody has a degree right now. And I'm like, what can I do to differentiate? And then I went
Mm.
into my MBA, and one of the best decisions I ever made, the skill set that I learned, it's anybody that's curious, a bachelor's degree journey is different than an MBA. MBA is all reading and writing, and learning those skills and applying them like that. I hit a crossroads during my time at FedEx, right? Like at FedEx,
Hmm.
I was a good leader, learned a lot of leadership, but like I could not apply any of those skills because it's kind of like a cookie cutter environment. And I'm like, I need
Was
more.
that frustrating?
Yeah, yeah. Like I learned all these skills and I'm like, I want to build a P&L. Like I want to do
Yeah.
that work instead of having it handed to me,
Yeah.
But yeah, it is safe to say that every part of where my journey to where I'm at now was learning, right? But
Hmm.
through that is where like my love of books came about and my ability to process
Hmm.
information by reading. Like some people say it's hard for me to retain what I read.
You
That
don't have
I'm
that problem.
fortunate. No,
Yeah.
I'm fortunate that reading's not a problem for me. But like really for people that are like that, it's like, hey, you just need to find a different channel, like a podcast or you're a visual learner or something like that.
Yeah, the best
Is very
communication
important.
channel that's going to allow you to connect to it. I envy the fact that you didn't do your MBA right after your bachelor's. There you had that gap of time in between, like putting that MBA back on your plate. I mean, kind of like what you're doing with your doctoral right now. I mean, you're consciously walking into more work, more reading, more writing. And I think back, I can't imagine, producing papers or case studies outside of, our day-to-day work that we do at Nolan Consulting Group.
Yeah.
And that's resistance.
Yeah. So let me paraphrase this by saying I'm really fortunate that I had a wife that walked through that whole journey with me because at the same time we were raising kids and
Mm.
like a lot of my free time was on that where like the responsibility fell on her and like that
Yeah.
was a huge part of it. So you got to have that support system as well to kind of
Team
go through it.
effort for sure.
Yeah. But resistance, absolutely. That is a big part of it.
Were there ever times where you maybe in going through your MBA or deciding to go for your MBA or your doctoral or kind of, any learning objective that you're going after? And I mean, we're talking about formal education here, but we all know, all of us listeners on here, we're all choosing to learn new skills and strategies in our life as because they're needed sometimes. But did you specifically face any kind of internal resistance at different points, through your learning journey?
Oh yeah. So like the academic world's intimidating, right? Just
Yeah.
learning, right? So like statistics, accounting, I
Mm.
dreaded that and hated it. And there was times where I would drop that class because I was so frustrated, which is ironic now because I fully embrace it and I use those skills every day that I do work. In the MBA journey, writer's block. Like you'd have to
Yeah.
deliver a document of writing and there's a deadline and like all the way up until the end, I'd be like stuck. And then once you got some flow, it would just kind of come about, right? So, but like the resistance was like, I'm dreading doing this and I don't want to put the time into it.
Can you only imagine if you had the AI tools that exist these days and more so to just get beyond that writer's block?
Molly, I was just talking to my oldest daughter about that. That is scary in the world of education because
Yeah.
they have these tools where you plug your papers in and it tells you if you plagiarize. But like with AI, the whole education industry is even in like public schools or, grade school level, like it's a problem, but it's a good thing from a learning perspective as we're
It is.
talking.
I do see it as a problem, just like as you said, those of us who didn't have those tools going through our own education or learning, there you had to work through that writer's block or you had to come up with those ideas. That's critical thinking. And I fear that we're gonna lose some critical thinking with the ability to just plug and play with
Yeah.
a digital tool.
I like to make the tie to like our clients and everything, right? So like our clients, they're awesome at like deciphering contracts
Hmm.
and like complex things like that. And like I would encourage them, like they navigated through that. Like a contract's intimidating to me.
Okay.
And like until when I was in manufacturing, I'm like, oh, I got to really dive into this and learn it. But like, just getting into it and breaking it down into little pieces really helps with resistance.
Mm,
Um, and like just our clients do it all the time. Like we all do, right? Just put it in bite-sized chunks. I
yeah.
think if it's intimidating on the surface.
Bite size is the best way to really attack anything. There was an article. I'm an avid follower of Seth Godin, his marketing guru, and I get his daily blog. And there was a blog that came through last week called "Honesty About Better," and I clicked into it, and it was a short blog focused on learning and adult learning and resistance and hesitancy and why. And I was like, this timing couldn't be better. As you know, I'm preparing to podcast with Jim about this topic. He says, we hesitate to learn, and there's a couple reasons why. It's because learning requires effort. Once we learn something, we might have to change our mind about the thing we thought. Changing our mind shifts how we seize the world, and that can be unsettling. Change feels risky. So it's funny how he's connecting learning to change. And he said, the most difficult part of adult learning is choosing to learn.
Yeah, he's right on. Like those
Yeah.
4 bullet points we all know change is difficult, but like the learning is a shift in perspective, right? So like
Mhm.
you learn something and I'll tie it to a mastermind group. That's why it's so powerful. Like
Love it.
you got 10 people on a mastermind group and they all have different perspectives on the same topic. But we tend to learn from that. Someone went out and learned something, like most recently for me in a mastermind group, it's marketing stuff.
Hmm.
One member comes back with all this information. He went and learned and brought it back to the group, and it just opens up perspective. So, like the link to learning what was different for that individual to go learn that. Like he took the step to learn that information and bring
Yeah.
it back. So, like I think taking a step in regard to Seth's article is incredibly important. That's probably the biggest point in his article. And the TED talk was great, Molly. I know you're going to watch it, but like
Hmm.
he talks about how he plays the clarinet, and really you got to dial into the music, the specific music that someone is looking for. Almost like we dial in on our niche of our business or our core purpose and not span the net wide. The same things with learning. Dial your learning into like what is really important for you or the business at the time
It's a really
and
good point.
become an expert at it.
Yeah. Don't just cast a wide net. Maybe you have to cast a wide net at first to see, what topics resonate with you, but it's the deep dive, the real learning. Go into those things that maybe bring you joy or really perk your interest so that you have a desire to want to learn more about it. I mean, the mastermind group example you mentioned is great. And I think it speaks to the kind of the larger energy around business owners and leaders within industries, wanting to network and share best practices and wanting to learn from each other, wanting to learn different perspectives. Someone who didn't really want to learn more about how to grow their business or how to deal with things from others would not put themselves in an environment that is fostering that kind of networking.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that.
And I think it takes a level, it can be uncomfortable to a lot of people to kind of put themselves into that group, but that's the resistance that they're getting over. Like that's the first step into learning.
It is like getting in that group, and the mastermind groups I do, they'll tell you like they want that time with each other because they just learn so much valuable input. Whatever the topic is, it just has a lot of value for them.
Do you ever, we've connected a lot of your learning to kind of the work that you're doing. Are there ever times when the things that you're learning, whether from your MBA or, being in your DBA program, the theoretical learning that have challenged the practical experience? So the things that you're learning, and then you go and you talk to a coaching client, and you're like, these things are conflicting. Have you ever seen that happen?
Oh, all the time, all the
Okay,
time.
I'm surprised by that answer.
Yeah. So maybe I make sure I'm understanding it right. I feel like both are needed. You need theoretical and you need
Yeah.
practical.
Okay.
So, and both are necessary to like really understand process or gain knowledge. So like you could be too theoretical, right? And really get into whatever it is that your topic you're working on. But like you're going to fail on the execution part. If
Mm.
you're trying to learn something and then apply it, you're going to fail if you're too theoretical. In the adverse, if you're too practical, like you're going to find yourself learning by trial and error, making mistakes, inefficiencies, and getting to where you need to be. I'll give you an example that I noted. So in home services, right? So
Okay.
like we're talking
Hmm.
paint and construction, HVAC, or anything electric. Theory would teach you, like in the paint world, proper prep work and setup, paint chemistry, surface compatibility, and things like that. Construction, it's like learning structures, a little bit of engineering, building codes, right?
Mm-hmm.
The practical side of that is like handling unexpected job site challenges or working efficiently with different materials when like a certain material that you use isn't available or managing teams and workflows. So like you need both. And the true skill is in being able to apply both. Like
Yeah.
take the fundamental theoretical aspect of it and execution and application. They go hand in hand in my eyes. The failure for people is when they're too rigid on the theoretical side or they believe hands on there is no theory and science behind what we're
Yeah.
doing and they just muscle through it.
It reminds me a little bit of a podcast that is about to be released as you know, by the time this episode comes out, it will have been released, that I did with Catherine about financial management perspectives and looking at it from like a strictly accounting view versus a strategic and operational view that we often look to coach to. But we often look to really make sure that clients understand the bridge between the two because there is a bridge. Your accountant's got a point and your coach has got a point. So where's the middle? So it's being able to find that bridge in between, I think, is where you become pretty powerful.
Yeah, as a coach, Molly, I think I have that conversation all the time. I had it this week. As coaches, I think we educate our clients on they're very heavily leveraged on the accounting side because of taxes,
Yes.
dollars are tied to it. Then they start working with us, and it's more managerial finance, like that
Hmm.
applies to strategy. And you're right, making that bridge. I'm looking forward to hearing that because, like, that's the conversation I find myself having with most of my clients. Like, all right, take off the accounting lens and let's look through the
Yeah.
managerial finance lens.
I mean, the fact that it's a conversation that you have often, Catherine says she has often, I've had it, be asked of me in conversations and like, how did we wait so long to do a podcast on this specific point within the world that we coach in? It just shows that we're living it every day. And sometimes it doesn't resonate to the top, but I hope we did the topic justice. But we look at the kind of the differences between the two, good examples, how we look to really find the bridge in between. But because yeah, both play a valid role in making smart decisions for the growth of your business.
Yeah, I like what I said to the client the other day. Accounting is a lagging indicator, kind of like a P&L is. Like
Hmm.
you get your results at the end of the month. Accounting, you get your results basically at the end of a quarter or something like that. The managerial finance aspect that is leading indicators where like there's information telling you, hey, you need to pivot this week or
Yeah.
this month. So making that connection is very important.
Agreed. So by the time this episode is out, it will have just been also released the week prior. What motivated you? I mean, you're a successful coach. The people who work with you love you. You're so sharp in different areas of business. We see that, and we're very lucky to have you a part of the team. But what motivated you to pursue or to continue pursuing your doctoral in business administration when you're already successful in coaching?
Yeah, I appreciate your kind words, Molly.
I'm not
You know what?
blowing.
I think
It's true. It's all true.
no, I know.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I feel like all of us on our team and every client that we work with, I think we're surrounded by motivated people. Like we're all motivated. All our clients are motivated. For me to go back, I think again, it was COVID was a turning point for me. I had
Mhm.
free time. My children aging, growing, and being less dependent on me. I'm like, all right, what am I going to do? And my love for learning, and because I did spend quite a few years teaching at the university level too, which I really loved. And I'm like,
Oh,
all
I don't
right,
think I
well,
knew that. That's cool.
yeah. I taught Holy Family, Quinn and Mercy, taught finance and marketing. But it was, I have a love for learning and I had time. And, getting a doctoral is not going to really, I don't think will change my life at all. I
Hmm.
think it's cool. It's cool to be saying, hey, I'm a doctor. If anything, it's cool to like set the premise for my children.
Yeah.
But I think it's more the journey. So like you go through that learning and you're like, wow, I can really do this. Right. So like, I'll be honest with you, the one thing that stood out to me, and you could probably relate to this because you love to run and all you guys are like, so only 2% of the US population has a doctorate. Right. So that
Um,
to me, I'm like, all right, that's a challenge. And I'm like, I will get the benefit and I will satisfy my personal desire to learn at the
yeah,
same time.
I get that. I get that.
You
It's
know,
like it's
I
like only
think
one
I
percent
think that
of
was the
the
motivation.
only 1% of the world, I think this is accurate, has run a marathon. And you're like, that feels cool. I'm in that. I'm in that top percent.
Yeah. So like, but that's a personal thing, right?
Yeah,
Like
it
it's,
totally is.
and I will add on to that. So I'm attending a doctoral through Walden University. But once I got involved with the people involved there, like my chairperson and like the facilitators, the cool part is like it opens your eyes to like their goal is to make an impact on the community or
Hmm.
social justice or and you're like, wow, I could really do something more impact to my local community or something. I'm going to learn how to apply this stuff to that. And
Making a
you
difference.
we were talking about like the academic world, and it's intimidating, but like,
Hmm.
more universities are bringing in the professionals. Like that's how I got involved. They're like, well, we can have a guy that is academically good on finance, but why not bring in a guy that runs a company and knows how to apply it and has real world examples and situations to put in front of people that make a connection for them.
Yeah, no. And I think, students look at those who are teaching who have had real life experience in a different lens per se, or, those who can provide lots of examples because it's connecting that theory to real life situations. And that's, I think about workshops that, we do, whether it's job site leadership or advanced field, that you and Brian have run. And there's teaching of the concepts, but then you guys are really good at applying examples and stories because that's what's going to resonate with the learners. And then obviously making them kind of workshop some things that are more practical to them. So it makes sense to me why universities might be making that shift. That's how people they're learning, they're seeing how people learn better.
Yeah, it applies to our world too, like our storytelling abilities. And I'm pretty sure I heard Brian say it. I say it all the time. If you could tie a story to the point you're trying to transfer of knowledge you're trying to have with a client, it's going to resonate a lot better with them.
Yeah. And we're always trying to, we want to hit value and make sure that things that we're working clients through, make sense to their world. You're learning over the years and the different environments that you've been exposed to. Has that influenced your coaching style at all?
Yeah, yeah. So like I always said that like my leadership style was servant leadership, right? So I know there's coaching styles if you really get into Dan Sullivan's world, but like I say that my coaching style is a servant coaching style.
Okay.
Just like my leadership style was. Like I am here to help my clients and their people become successful. And like we were talking, their problems are my problems. And if you meet with a client and like there's a really sticky situation and like I'm sitting down at night and then I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about it and like the light bulb goes off. I'm like, let me look at this, let me do this. And then I can bring something back to them. And like again, that transfer of knowledge to them. But wherever I got it from, I'm just presenting it in a manner that they can grab onto and take it and run.
I like that. It's your servant coaching that matches your servant leadership. After you finish your doctoral program, you check the DBA off your list. Do you have a vision for continuing formal education beyond this? Is there something that even exists?
That's a good question. No, I don't believe so. I think that a lot of people go after multiple degrees, right?
Okay.
But let's not forget about the dollar value that's tied to like
That's true.
doing this. And I'm always shocked at people that like, hey, I got 3 degrees in this. And, I'm in a DBA, so doctoral business admin. So that is the more applied side,
Okay.
right? Learning and applying it to like business and a company. The PhD doctoral is like a different world where you don't get a PhD unless you're going into academics and you want to be like a professor or a tenured associate at a university. And those people tend to keep going on and get different degrees because they're a part of the university. So
Okay.
I'm going to go on a limb and say there's probably not much expense tied to it there.
Yeah.
But for me, I think that I always said that no. But next thing on my list is probably writing a book or something on leadership because I'm so passionate about it.
Cool.
This is all part of my retirement plan. Like I'm like everyone else, most of our clients. Like I'm not the type that's going to go retire somewhere, sit on a beach.
Yeah.
If I can teach at a university and stay engaged and connected with people and like transfer things I know, and it
Yeah.
requires you to stay on top of your game, right? Like you got to know what they need to learn. That
Mm.
is probably my road from this point forward. Well, after a doctoral is just helping people, like
Yeah.
helping people learn and, sharing my experiences and my skills because it may help them.
That's great. I love it. I mean,
Yeah.
it connects well, just even to the coaching that you do. There's certain people that make for great coaches, and there are people who want to help and teach and know how to connect with others and be that mentor figure. And I think it comes naturally to folks like yourself, and of course, a lot of coaches on our team. And going back to the point, the folks that just keep getting degrees and degrees and degrees, I don't know how they do it financially, but also motivation wise. Clearly that is not who I am.
Well,
um,
you're right. Like it takes work, right?
yeah,
And I
yeah,
think this topic in general for like our whole audience is like everyone we're associated with is a hard worker. They wouldn't be where they're at. So like
absolutely.
you can achieve whatever you want. Like if you're like, hey, I want to go get a doctoral in painting in Pennsylvania using an immigrant workforce. Like the programs are when you do a study, it is so dialed in all those levels. It isn't like, hey, I want to get a doctoral in growing a commercial industrial painting company. It's too
Okay.
broad. They narrow you in to say where. You can't even say East Coast. You got to say Philadelphia, right? And
Wow.
they just dial you further and further in.
So yours being a doctoral business administration, does yours go deeper?
Yeah, so I began my study and before I paused, and I had a chair and a committee and everything. My study was in because I was in the airport world,
Mm-hmm.
was applying lean methodologies to airport services, which is a huge opportunity given from the passenger experience for everybody involved in that ecosystem. Now, I think mine's definitely going to shift and be more geared towards small business owners and whatever I can do there. And it may include the lean stuff, it may
Mm-hmm.
not, it may be leadership
Okay.
because, one of the biggest gaps I feel like in the last 3 years that I've encountered in this work is the gap in leadership from an owner down to the front line. And there's a lot of knowledge in between there that could be helpful.
I love it. It makes a lot of sense. Do you have any advice for those listening, who are whether they've been on the fence about choosing to learn something new or to pursue a certificate or new skills to kind of get beyond that challenge, that choosing to learn challenge? Do you have any advice around that you would offer?
Yeah, just do it.
Just
I
do
will
it.
I will go back to like your world of being a runner. Like you
Yeah.
started somewhere, right? Take the first step.
Mm-hmm.
I think in all the like as business owners, they all read and these influencers are like, just take the first step. Just take the first step. Go get the first certificate. Prove to yourself that like reflection is key. You look back and you're like, wow, that was easy. Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what happened with me, Molly. The MBA was easy. The time frame, the 2, 3 year time frame, I'm like, whoa, that's long. But when I look back, I'm like, it was easy,
Wow.
So
It
like
was a blip of time.
a blip of time. And I would say for anybody, just go challenge yourself and do it. Like anything else, we can do anything. That's what I
Mm-hmm.
learned, right?
All right, last question, because we're always looking for new recommendations. What are your favorite sources of learning outside of the education that you do, whether it be books or podcasts? Do you have some favorite authors or podcasts that you follow?
Yeah, so podcasts are gold. They are gold. And that whole market is blowing up. Everybody has a podcast
It's true.
now, right?
It's
But
true.
I feel like I found that the greatest ones are the ones that aren't mainstream big names that
Hmm.
I get referred to me. Like most recently, the most impactful one for me was Acquiring Minds that I put in front of Brian. And that was relevant because we're working on Built to Sell program. And
Yep.
I mean, that was gold. Like some guy just happened to mention that to me. And I'm like, whoa, like, all right. So that's why, like, every time I'm talking to someone, they mention something like that, I make sure I follow through and I look. So podcasts are gold.
Okay. Do you ever ask people straight up, like, what are you listening to right now? Or
Every call. And especially with the clients, I'm like, what are you reading right now? Right. Because they rely on me. And
yeah.
we can burden people with a reading list for sure. Like, books. So, like, you ask me authors right now, it's the hot one for me is Dan Sullivan, Ben Hardy, 10X is easier than 2X, Who Not How, Gino Wickman, Shine,
Mhm.
Traction, like, only because, like, I read those over and over again because I always find little nuggets that I can use with clients.
You sound like Brian and
Yeah.
Kevin. I see that like you guys just get sucked into these business books because it's exciting to you. I prefer the podcast route. But
Yeah.
no, it's absolutely true. Those are books that I see a lot of coaches reading over and over and over again.
So the one thing I might do differently, and it's because of the exposure I have, though, is like academics, right?
Hmm.
So when you go to a school, you usually get access to their library or even Google Scholar, right? So like I'll give you an example of how I use that, right? Like so it's full of peer-reviewed studies.
Okay.
Peer review is key because it went through a body of people that said, all right, the author of this really knows what they're talking about and did their due diligence.
Got
But
it.
like one I pulled recently was called A Building Trades Crisis in the United States, right? And it touched on like the scope of the shortage, contributing factors, strategies to be implemented to correct course, and like the reintroduction of trades programs into educational institutions at all levels, right? So like I'll read that. You pull out stuff
Hmm.
that is applicable and like you're like, wow, all right, that was cool. I learned that. And so I personally use that as a resource. And I would tell it's scary when you pull up a study because it's probably 30 to 100 pages, but
Yeah.
like you just flip through it and you're like, oh, that resonates with me. But like I just mentioned to you, you could be as specific as possible. Like say,
Okay.
I want to learn about starting a plumbing company in a rural area with a median income of this. There's going to be something out there, whether it's in the United States, Canada, Europe, there's just a ton out there. So like
Hmm.
you get a broader scope of information that way.
Yeah, the more dialed in, the more depth of knowledge is going to be sent your way, more
Yeah.
resources
So
that are fitting.
you don't take a study and read it front page to back page, right? You just dissect it, highlight it, pick through it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
skim it. Have you become in time a faster reader? Or, I mean, I know you can retain things really well, but have you, do you listen to things on like 2x in terms of speed?
Listening, I do. If you look at any of the books I got, I destroy them. So I make sure my first pass is worth it and like
Okay.
notes, highlights, folded pages. And like I could pick up, like right now I'm sitting in front of my bookshelf. I could pick up any book and like I know if I go to one of those pages, there's a golden nugget there that I used at some.
Sweet.
Yeah, I think so. Like the retainage has
Yeah.
gotten better for me, Molly.
No, I think that, yeah, you're not just, sitting there with a book in your hand. You're like actively taking notes, highlighting, like you're doing something that's gonna make it sticky in a sense.
Yeah. Your format has a lot to do with it, right? So like I have a problem with reading on my iPad or my Kindle because I don't have the ability to write notes like that and stuff.
Yes.
I'm having a hard time with that transition. I would love to fully integrate into an iPad and like personally I'm getting better with the notes and all that too, but I just feel like it's not tangible for me. Like I can't.
I'm with you. I think it's also a preference thing. I much prefer a hard copy book, or it's how I learn better, seeing the words, feeling the pages, connecting versus I just think we're all so exposed to screens all the time that, what's the words on one screen? How's it different than the words on the next? And then I just kind of get lost in the visual of words and not know what they actually mean or are telling me. So I'm there with you. It's old school, but some of us have got to
Yeah.
stay old school. The books, we got to hold on to our books.
Yeah. I still get magazines.
I
So
love magazines too.
yeah. Yeah.
I always read magazines back to front. I don't know why. It's always a habit that
I
I've.
think I do that too because there's always a good article on the back
Yeah,
page. I think.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. And the front's generally a lot of ads, a lot of, marketing stuff. Like the real meat is at the back. Well, Jim, this was fun. Thank you for joining me and talking about this. Like I said, you really live the learning experience with all of the programs that you've got, have achieved and are continuing to work through. And I love just talking about how you connect the academic and that theory to practical. I mean, and as you said, both are important.
Yeah, no, I enjoy it, Molly. Thank you. I'm not real big on talking about like my experience or myself, but if it can help anyone, like, or if anybody just wants to tap me for like how I handle certain things, I'm open to any. I appreciate the topic, and as I mentioned, I think this would be good to hit some of our members and like their
Yeah.
approaches and stuff.
Their learning approach. Yeah, because everyone's got something and has a different kind of learning journey to share. And I think you're right. We can all learn from each other's learning journeys.
Just do it. That's
Just do
it.
it.
Let's just do it.
We'll leave it there. Just do it. Thank you, Jim.
All right, Molly. Thank you.